Good afternoon, and thank you for having me in this very important session on the right to WaSH for displaced and marginalized people. The SDG 6 targets, among others, the universal and equitable access to safe drinking water, sanitation and hygiene for all. When you want to reach this goal, though, we need to speak about persons with disabilities. With an estimated 1 billion of the world population, they are the largest minority of the world and unfortunately also one of the most marginalized groups. In 2006, the United Nations recognized this and explicitly included the right to equitable access to WaSH service in the Human Rights Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. After the World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul in 2016 and the Charter on Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities in Humanitarian Actions, much progress has been made towards equitable access until now. However, many studies and HI's experiences show that persons with disabilities most of the time still face many barriers and risks to an equitable access to basic services like water, sanitation and hygiene in humanitarian and forced displacement situations. Why is that? There's not one answer to these questions, but multiple factors and interlinked factors. I'd like to highlight especially three of them for now. First, quantitative and qualitative data disaggregated on gender, age, and disability is still not consistently collected and used by WaSH actors. Without data, though, we cannot plan and design inclusive responses, and we cannot ensure that really all have access to our services. Second, disability is often not considered as a cross-cutting topic, but as a specific issue for specialized organizations. The result is that disability is not mainstreamed and persons with disabilities are not included in the general target populations of our WaSH programs. In other words, too often the needs of persons with disabilities are somehow considered as being separate of persons without disabilities. And third, but by no means least, persons with disabilities are not meaningful participating in our WaSH responses, but seen as passive recipients at most. The disability rights movement coined in the 20th century the slogan, "Nothing about us without us." And indeed, this simple sentence gets to the heart of the issue. We need to ensure that they participate on all levels and in all stages of our work. WaSH approaches, designs, guidelines, and standard operating procedures most of the time follow a traditional approach that does not consider diversity as an integral part of every society. What do you think how traditional approaches were developed? Exactly without the participation of women and men with diverse disabilities of all ages and socioeconomic, cultural, and ethnic backgrounds. We cannot achieve equitable access for all if we do not change this traditional mindset. So what should we do differently to ensure the right to WaSH for all in our programs and projects? The recently launched system-wide YES guidelines on inclusion of persons with disabilities in humanitarian action provides a very practical and helpful guidance to start answering this question. I'd like to summarize it with extracting 4 key approaches. First, meaningful participation of persons with different disabilities in all phases of our programs and in all areas of our organizations. Second, consistent identification and removal of barriers for persons with disabilities. And barriers are by no means limited to physical barriers, but include also attitudinal, institutional, and communication barriers. And third, empowerment and capacity building of persons with disabilities to redress long-standing broad discrimination. And then last but not least, the consistent collection and use of disaggregated data on at least disability, gender, and age. To achieve an inclusive WaSH response and to seriously move towards the achievement of SDG 6, all stakeholders have to act and adopt an intersectional and localized approach. The necessary change is not happening overnight, though. It is a marathon and not a sprint. But I really believe that together we can achieve a really inclusive WaSH response. Thank you for your attention.